24, Driving Business.
And look at our top stories.
In business today, Capital Markets ERA endorsed local investment as energy and electricity subsector offer openings. Parliament offers 1.5 trillion shillings piecemeal supplementary, quantities 1.34 trillion deferred over persistent non-priorities. CSOs demand government redress on public expenditure as rationalizing MDA still lags.
And now we kickstart off with the piecemeal supplementary budget. Amid its protest by legislators, the 1.5 trillion shillings part of the 2023-2024 supplementary budget has been approved as the extra and contentious 1.34 trillion budget that included allocations to Atiak, Munyonyo Conference Center and Elboa Specialized Hospital has been rejected. This is the latest development as Parliament fumbles to pass a definitive supplementary budget. Samla Hanifa reports.
Point of order.
Over the past weeks, Parliament has been at crossroads over this year's financial supplementary budget. The highly contentious 1.34 trillion shillings has failed to meet the bar, thus being dropped. The process, which started at the Committee of Supply of the whole House, first met resistance from a section of legislators who wanted to handle the supplementary schedule as a whole, despite guidance from the Speaker.
We have found a problem with money spent under 3%. And we need more time as a House to look into it. Listen. So we defer it. Okay? And I'll put a question, so you will vote your way. So he's saying we defer it. But we have also money which requires prior approval of government before it can be spent. And that money is holding very, very critical items. Very, very critical items.
And we should move the whole thing entirely, because when you look at those that are in 3%, you'll find education, for example, you'll find health. So as a mother and a person on education, a member of Parliament on Education Committee, we are soon going to see strikes in schools and everything. So I think we should handle it entirely than breaking it down.
To spend within the 3% items that were rejected by the House, they use that to finance those activities, and now they say you had already approved it, and that is where we are interested to know that within the 3%, what are the items funded, and those items fit the decision that this House took when we were appropriating.
The Shadow Minister for Finance, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, further guided and pleaded with the legislators to accept the House move on with the prior supplementary that requires Parliament's approval and leave out the controversial 3%, which government spent without the approval of Parliament. This was still met with resistance from fellow MPs.
Honourable colleagues, we have two sets of supplementaries before this Parliament. We have the one under 3%. That is here for approval. That one is loaded with most of the questionable items. And most of those items are where members have huge opinion against. Now, the one that requires prior approval, which is before us, the chairperson has talked about, has monies that by and large is not controversial. Because these are small monies for districts, wages, for World Bank, for grow projects, for which you cannot hold on to for long. Therefore, as we cross-examine to detail the extent of impunity on 3%, let us not curtail the service delivery on the prior.
With every aspect of the supplementary, we disapprove what we don't want. And we say, this one Parliament is not approving. Then, when we say we are not approving this item, we send it to the necessary process that it requires. But if we are here to say that this section we are not going to touch it, let us not fear to disapprove of what we refused to appropriate.
Guidance from the Speaker and the Leader of Opposition influenced the legislators to approach the debacle on two separate fronts, ultimately deferring the controversial 3%.
I now put the question that a total sum of shillings 1,524,961,139,468 be provided for as total supplementary expenditure for the financial year 2022-2023. Those in favour say aye, and to the contrary nay. The ayes have it.
The 3% supplementary budget that members of Parliament have vehemently rejected entails money that was allocated to Atiak Sugar Factory, Munyonyo Conference Centre and Lubowa Specialized Hospital, among others.
So now what we've done today is that we have separated the two. We have separated those that are really innocent and genuine expenditures, okay, and concern the common man, for them to be passed. And then those that are questionable, that have all those other data expenditure, Munyonyo, Atiak, as you know them, land bought for so many billions in Kololo, 9 decimals for 10 billion, all that has pended approval.
The Deputy Speaker has further directed the Budget Committee to continue scrutinizing the 3% supplementary before being laid on the floor of Parliament for more debate. Samlanifa, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
All right, now let's look at diversifying local investment. The domestic capital development has been highly regarded as an avenue for local investment and revenue mobilization, which, according to capital markets experts, would help retaliate the country's debt distress. The Electricity Regulatory Authority has today stressed such instances, confirming just how viable sectors such as energy are potent with the electricity subsector, a major consideration for investment, a bonus to economic development. Mary Goretti Nachiganda has details.
Just yesterday, capital markets reckoned on the instance of domestic investment as an alternative revenue mobilization strategy to address the country's debt distress, default risk and development shortfalls.
You can invest in private equity at the maximum of 15%. Is there absorption? No. Actually, it is only, I think, around 2% in that space. So the headroom is still huge. But I think we also need to appreciate the dynamics which informs that. This is what we think. Our market is, I think from a structure perspective, has some kind of informalities. You know, the books from the investment side say that you maximize returns from a high-risk investment. In this country, you can get high returns from a low investment vehicle. So that contradicts the principle that is well known. If you still have vehicles that are still attractive in government securities, which are huge and providing huge returns, And with the move...
All right, apologies for that particular report, just a mishandling of a few of the name tags. We shall be giving you more details regarding that same particular report later on in the bulletin. But now let's continue with emphasizing equitable employment. As Uganda's unemployment surges with just 10 million employed out of the employable 23.5 million Ugandans, there is growing concern over the relative value and work standards at the different job postings in the private-public sector space. Patrick Okello Ngola, the State Minister for Labour, Employment and Industrial Relations, has today enlightened the country about subsequent steps being undertaken to address poor work environments that have inhibited gross economic productivity. Bronia Katusime has more.
Uganda's youthful population has been on the downside of employment in both formal and informal spaces. According to the 2021 National Labour Force Survey report, 48% of employed youths aged 18 to 30 years are underutilized, much to the impact with the rapid population growth. Despite national labour protection provisions, for example, on social security, wages, disputes resolution, a poor working culture and mindset still prevails. According to the Labour Ministry, this is a leading factor to limited employment.
The government has included the mindset change pillar under the parish development model, which is a pillar we are supposed to handle in gender, labor and social development. The pillar is intended to provide public awareness and sensitization for positive mindset change as a way of reducing negative culture, beliefs and practice that hinder people from participating effectively in development programs.
Compensation and disputes resolution is one of the leading pending issues for redress. UBOS's National Labour Force Survey 2021 indicated 898 people from the working population have suffered accidents and 357 sustained serious injuries that induced layoffs. Such concerns have necessitated demand for resolution through implementation of occupational safety, among other measures. Under the Employment Act, workers have the right to report any hazardous working conditions, for instance, safety in transporting chemicals in industries.
And failure to pay wages is a crime. But also, workers have the right under the Employment Act to report failure of payment of wages to a district labor officer, including to the Commission of Labour at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. And labor officers are empowered by law to entertain cases of non-payment of wages and to settle such cases in a manner they deem fit.
Additionally, a proactive working culture and upholding ethics has been critically echoed as essential to realization of government aspirations for transformation into middle-income status by 2040.
The positive work norms and ethical behavior will improve our country's reputation, thereby attracting investment by both domestic and foreign entrepreneurs. The associated hard work and commitment will enhance productivity, profitability, and competitiveness of products.
In the face of numerous challenges, capacity development has been skyped among many Ugandans, with numerous youths incapacitated to fully invest in training and career development. Thus, a deficit on per capita income on grounds of underemployment, exploitation or unemployment. Bronia Katsime, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
Meanwhile, salaries and wages mark the biggest government expenditures, that is at both local and central government level, across major development programs. Civil society organizations have in turn demanded for actualization of rationalizing ministries, departments and agencies in order to reduce redundancy and administrative expenses to finance development. Pedersen Mombere gives us more in this report.
Yes. We know the money is allocated, but are we comfortable that it is actually being used to deliver on its intended purposes?
Amidst a growing debt burden, unfunded priorities and projects, government has found it hard to realize major development and investment goals. According to civil society organizations, recurrent expenditures that include wages, salaries, interest on domestic and external debts, plus commitment fees continue to outstand development expenditures, limiting available resources. Government has thus been encouraged to rationalize ministries, departments and agencies (MDAs) in order to reduce redundancies and lower administrative expenses and boost resource management performance.
Our concern, our issue, our call for government should be that government should aim at reducing its expenditures, on a bloated government on a bloated public sector by basically rationalizing a different number of MDAs. So if you have duplicated roles being done by a number of MDAs, it would be good for government to merge them, as it was in the call, I think in 2018, to merge them together, and in that case they would be reducing the government expenditure and as well working towards enhancing government revenue in the long term.
Among the respective programs, for instance, agro-industrialization, the multi-million recurrent wage and non-wages expenditure favorably competes with domestic and external development financing. From the civil society's perspective, high administrative costs, corruption and supplementary budget financing, among other issues, have distressed development progresses. Ramadan Igobi, the permanent secretary from the Ministry of Finance, previously confirmed just how far the Office of the Attorney General has gone in regard to rationalization of ministries, departments and agencies despite delays.
Implementation of rationalization, it has delayed, but it is on track. The Office of Attorney General is finalizing the legal revisions needed to have these institutions rationalized.
From the Ministry of Finance data, of the 48,130.8 billion for the current approved financial year budget, wages accrued 6,375.58 billion, 11,113.89 billion for non-wages, and 661.95 billion for arrears. With efforts to offset domestic revenue still on course through tax reforms, civil society organization further commended government for the implementation of domestic revenue mobilization strategy that foresees an increase in tax to GDP ratio by 0.5% every financial year.
The non-tax revenues, we see that most government officials have continued to collect and spend at source. We want to make sure that whatever revenue is being collected is actually collected electronically, so that we minimize on the loss, because right now we know that government is implementing the e-cash system, and there is some kind of resistance when it comes to some of these reforms. So we commend that effort, and we hope that we'll be able to yield a lot of revenue in the long run.
As redress of redundancies gains momentum, concerns about the rising debt stock, which peaked at 86.6 trillion as of June from 78.1 trillion, is notable, citing how it still erodes revenue critical for numerous development initiatives. Pedison Mumbere, Smart 24 TV, Business Today.
And now we do head south of the African continent. As South Africa lives on load shedding and power rationing that has caused its sustainable growth, the embattled energy powerhouse Eskom has been dragged in mud. The former company CEO Andre de Ruyter reveals that about 1 billion rand is lost to corruption involving the company and top government officials.
In a remote interview with the Parliamentary Committee on Public Accounts, the former CEO of Eskom confirmed this statement on the level of corruption at Eskom in a document he submitted. He stated that 1 billion rand, which is equivalent to $55 million, is stolen from Eskom every month.
The South African police at the highest level, with the National Commissioner of Police and a number of other senior officials, generals, brigadiers, as well as senior representatives of the SSA. I also shared information about corruption and theft with the NADjoints at the South African Police Services College in Pretoria. And that, I think, gives sufficient credence to the fact that I extensively engaged with the law enforcement authorities to make clear that appropriate steps should be taken. I also took steps to ensure that I could improve internal controls. Should the Commission or the committee so wish, I will elaborate on that in my submission to the committee. I do reflect on, for example, the measures taken to improve supply chain controls, control over coal quality and management, and so forth. So I do think that I'm comfortable that appropriate steps were taken in order to ensure that we do have significantly enhanced controls. As is required, I also reported this to my shareholder representative.
In order to improve the country's energy infrastructure and address the root cause of the crisis that included lack of investment and outdated technology, they will require a coordinated effort for the government, the private sector, and the civil society to ensure that South Africa has a reliable and sustainable energy system that can support economic growth and development.
The reporting of criminal activities has not been at one point or one incident. There's multiple investigations taking place. What we know and can confirm is that the SIU is investigating some of these matters, and the SIU has been cooperating with us. So they've given us an update on some of the issues, and we are now allowing those investigations to run their course. Where we have an issue is on the allegations Mr. Derate has made, that if he is correct in what he is saying, we expect then the minister, the advisor, the Hawks, and the National Commission of Police and